Hey guys, and welcome to today's episode of Give It the Beans. It is my pleasure to introduce you some fellow Scotsmen and Scotswomen. It is the one and only Hannah and Kenny. How are we doing, guys?
We're good, thanks. Good.
Fantastic. Now, for those of the listeners out there that they've went, cool, wicked, you finally got some other Scots people on the episode. Could you introduce to them who you guys are, what you're about? I know about you, but some of them don't. So give us a brief introduction, both of you at the same time, one after the other, whatever it may be.
Cool. I'll go first then. So I'm Kenny. I am now a competitive classic physique competitor. I've worked my way up from the men's physique category, and last year made my classic physique debut, which I loved, and that was it. That was a sort of goal for me to get there, and the fact that I got there means that I can just kind of concentrate now on working at building that wee bit of size.
Absolutely.
And I'm Hannah, obviously, and I've always been a bikini competitor. I'm still in the junior category at the moment, for another 2 years, and then we're going up to the open. But yeah, and we're obviously KHRU Coaching as well, so online coaches and personal trainers based up in the hills in Inverness.
I was away.
Nowhere.
There'll be some people thinking, "Fun, is that like in Middle Earth? Is that like beside Isengard or something?" It's just the north of Scotland. But for those of you that are listening, please do give them both a follow. They're both very, very humble, very good athletes, very good competitors. Kenny himself and Hannah, both together form KHRU Coaching, and you guys have literally came on the scene out of nowhere and erupted. And from my perspective, it's great to see you guys succeed. But talk me through, what is KHRU Coaching all about? What's the ethos behind it? What's your guys' mentality? And who do you work with?
Cool. So we started KHRU last year, and the idea behind it was we were both doing jobs that we hated. Health, fitness, always been our major passions. So we decided, right, let's ditch what we don't like about our lives, and let's try and just focus on being happy. So we came up with the idea of KHRU, and the reason we wanted to become online coaches is because obviously we've had online coaches ourselves, and we have identified that there is a space in the market for online coaches who deal with Gen Pop clients, rather than always aiming towards, the competitive bodybuilding clients.
Yeah, so before we actually started KHRU, we hired a mindset coach just because I was very limiting belief, and I thought I was going to let the team down and just didn't believe in myself enough. So we did that, and then in September, we sort of felt ready to just leave our jobs completely, and we just took the risk and started KHRU. We started coaching people online, and then we went to work there's only 2 gyms in Inverness, so 2 health clubs. So basically, we started working there as personal trainers as well, and then we just gave it everything, and it's just kind of kicked off. But we've literally not had a day off, and I don't know. So
you'll know that better than anybody.
I'm going to say, looking at both you guys' Instagram stories, you talk about you usually work till you go to bed, lack of sleep. Yeah. I've been there, and I respect it. I know what it's all about. I know the graft you've got to put in the first couple of years. So keep going. By all means, you'll feel like you won't have a day off, and it'll be 5 years down the line. But really, you'll know as well as I do, it's not really work. But that being said, I want to crack into today's episode, and that is how a couple is able to get through prep together. You're probably one of the only couples that I know is able to do it, but how much you guys support each other, show each other love, I think is amazing. So to get right into it, what I want you to do, if you can you describe the other person individually? I want to know what their traits are like, what their personalities are like, but I want you to then say if that changes over prep or not. So if we can go one at a time. So Kenny, describe Hannah first.
Oh, you made me go first. So, as you, Vaughn, you probably know for looking at Hannah's Instagram, she's a very laid-back person. Not much affects her. She always struggles with this little bit of lack of self-belief, but it is getting better now, especially because we're coaching ourselves. and trying to install that into other people. So she is really getting there with it. So that's been a massive improvement. She's probably the most consistent person that I've ever met when it comes to following the process of bodybuilding. She never misses a meal. She won't skip a second of cardio. She makes sure that every step is done. She won't go to bed until it's done.
I've seen that. She was walking up and down your patio.
Yes. So I think if I was to sum Hannah up, it is she is obsessed with doing things right, no matter what area of her life that is. If Hannah was to become a flight attendant tomorrow, she would want to be the best flight attendant there was. And, that's something I really, really admire about her. Then, when it comes to prep, all those attributes are still there. She's still a perfectionist, and she's still very laid back. But the only thing that kind of changes is her awareness. Now, Hannah's goes at her own speed. She does things. I kind of think we're never going to get all this done in a day. She needs to speed up, but she'll get there. And it absolutely baffles me how she manages to get there, because she does things at her pace. Now, I'll give an example of like the way that things change when she's on prep. The other night we were out for a walk and we went like through the woods, and Hannah's biggest fear is frogs. Like, she's petrified.
Right, okay.
And it was pissing rain. It was so wet. And I just seen her flip out, started screaming, froze on the spot. And it was because a frog had hopped out in front of her. And I've never seen anything like it. It was a proper frenzy. So the difference with Hannah on prep, if that frog was to jump out in front of her in prep, she'd probably look at it and keep walking. It's almost like she becomes numb to any sort of feeling other than just getting the job done.
Brilliant. I love that. That's a very detailed description, and one that you certainly kept yourself in the good books. So
definitely.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Nobody's ever described.
And this is probably the thing that keeps us going, is I know what to say.
Now, Hannah, time for you to get your own back. Can you describe what your man is like, but how he changes or not throughout prep?
So, he's very caring all the time, like for me and our clients and stuff. Just such a caring person. Always wanting to learn, which doesn't change either. Like, always wanting to improve. Very disciplined, and like me, but probably worse, more of a perfectionist, but in the way that he beats himself up a lot if he can't maybe get something. Like, you've probably seen the gazebo video when he's like a rep short. He just goes crazy. So that obviously is heightened on prep, because I think he's harsher on himself on prep, because obviously you got the added pressure of the stage approaching. Lacks like a bit of self-belief as well, I think, although he won't admit that. But I'm always there to kind of kick on the arse and tell him to get a grip. But just so loving and caring mostly, and probably the most understanding person in the whole world. Like, when it comes to like sort of sensitive subjects as well, like some guys aren't very understanding, but he's very understanding of everything like that. Just
I'm waiting on the bad bit here.
Nice things. I've only got nice things to say, but on prep, it's all the same, but obviously much shorter fused. So especially around like meal timings, it's a bit of a nightmare sometimes. Like, he's always productive. Like, he's much more productive than me, so that's where we kind of help each other out, because I'm a lot more chilled. Kenny's stress levels are always a lot higher than mine, and he's always going at 100 miles an hour. And that's kind of just like raised much higher on prep, because obviously he sleeps a lot less. He's up at like 4 a.m, just running about trying to get things done. Whereas I'm a lot more chilled, but that leads to him being very sleepy throughout the day on prep, like falling asleep standing up, falling asleep on the couch, falling asleep like
driving.
So there's that on prep, and just much shorter fused, which I'm sure we could speak about further into the podcast. But yeah, just doesn't deal well with hunger in the slightest.
Okay.
Very.
I can totally relate to that. Not myself, but working with a lot of clients.
Yeah.
Very much relate to that. And I was kind of going to ask you guys how long it took you guys to get back to your old self. But what it seems is you both kind of go into the void as such, or go into prep together. Not really much changes. You become even more supportive.
Yeah.
Their goals, and then you come out the other end, I imagine, stronger.
I think what it is because you'll know better than anybody, it's quite a lonely road that you go down when you're competing. And for me, I always just feel thankful that I've got Hannah there to support me, because friends, family, they'll support you, but they won't understand you a lot of the time. And they'll say to you, why do you need to get up at 4 a.m. to do your cardio? Just leave it. You're lean. You look good. You've got a six pack. And no matter how hard you try to explain to people that the levels you have to go to, they don't quite understand it, whether as Hannah does. So that support there is golden.
Yeah.
I think as well, just being honest with each other. You get some people that will just sort of blow smoke up each other's arses to make them feel good. Obviously, that's what you're nice to people in a relationship. But say, for example, I'm looking a bit shit in one of my check-ins, Kenny wouldn't be like, no, you look amazing. He'd be like, yeah, you are looking a wee bit watery or something. And that's so important for me, because that gives me trust in him as well, that he's not just saying it to make me feel good, and vice versa as well.
Yeah. And I know that you guys have went through quite a few preps together. Maybe perhaps you went through them all. Has that always been the case? So would you say, if we were to talk about the first prep you guys done together to now, would you say that you've done anything differently? Has anything changed at all?
I think it was just building up that bit of self-belief through having failed before. And you know that once you've failed so badly, it doesn't get any worse than that. So you know that the only way is up. And then I think through just making sure that we got the right help with the right coach, that there just gave us that little bit of reassurance that everything was going to be okay. That coach wasn't going to let us get on the stage looking like shit. So having that behind you and knowing that there was going to be a guaranteed good end result, that installed a lot of faith for us. So that's probably the only thing that's changed.
I think as well, from our first prep, both of our individual attitudes have changed a lot. I know for my first prep, I felt quite sorry for myself, even though it was my choice to do it. And I think I see quite a lot, where people are complaining about having to do their cardio and complaining about being hungry, but it's a choice. And I kind of, when I did my first prep, I felt like I would cry, having to do cardio and stuff, and I just needed to give myself a good shake, get a grip, because it's a choice. But I think Kenny helped with that as well, because he wouldn't hesitate to be like, if you don't want to do it, just don't do it. And then I'd be like, oh.
there is days, even through the most late preps that we've just done there, you do question why you're doing it when you're right in the trenches, when you've got so much to do with work, you've got so much to do in your life, and you think, why am I putting myself through this? What is it going to be worth it? Having Hannah there to say to me, of course it's going to be worth it. You're going to be so much better than what you were. That for me is motivation enough just to keep going. And like she says, take that kind of feeling of feeling sorry for yourself away from it.
Now, what I'm thinking is that there might be some people listening who maybe don't have another person like yourself. They have a partner, but their partner maybe doesn't quite understand. So let's maybe get you, from both you guys' perspective, of perhaps a female that is prepping whose partner isn't prepping or isn't a bodybuilder, and the same with a guy who's prepping whose partner isn't. What sort of level of maybe advice would you give to try and get a little bit more support? Would you sit down? Would you talk to them? Whatever you guys would do. So I've already asked Kenny to go first. So this time, ladies first, I'm going to ask Hannah. Let's take the scenario. So
it's hard for me, because obviously I've always kind of had Kenny for my preps, but I would definitely sit down and sort of explain why you're going to do it, because it's not something that you do for no reason. So if you can explain why it means so much to you, and hopefully the other half would support, I would imagine, support your decision because it's what you want to do. And I would also like make sure you're aware of the like negative side effects of it. So like in a relationship, how much time you're going to be spending on prep, like out doing cardio, going to the gym, because I can't imagine you'll have much time for your partner towards the end of the prep. Also like your mood swings, like I know some people get quite like moody, and obviously your hormones just go crazy, so like your sex drive and stuff like that will be something that the other half won't know about. And obviously even little things like date nights will change, like you can't go out for dinner, like these are things people I think might forget. Like even if you're sort of on like a mini cut or like a dieting phase, it can still feel a bit odd because you can't go out for dinner and stuff. So I would just sit down and sort of prepare them for it before you go ahead and do it, and make sure you have that honesty as well.
And I think obviously relationships, two-way street. You know, if I was going to compete and Hannah wasn't, I would make sure that, you know, like she says, she was going to be aware of everything that was to come. But I think from a competitor's point of view, I would look at it and think, am I ready to put her through that? Because, you know, it's all very well me wanting to step on stage, but this person is then going to be without their other half for a good 12 weeks at least. And, you know, if you're doing a 9-to-5 job like most people normally do, you're going to be doing your cardio before work. You got to be going to the gym after work. You probably got to be trying to get steps after that. So it doesn't leave a lot of time in the day. And then if you're a good bodybuilder, you're going to be then trying to focus on your recovery. So once all that is done, you're speaking, you've got 90 minutes before you have to get into bed. And if your other half is going to be completely fine with that, then it's awesome. But I think it would be hard for somebody to understand that and not feel like it's going to affect them.
100%. And this was something that, so if I think back to last year's prep, the same with you guys, Ali, when we both went through our dieting phases, both our other halves at times thought, was there something wrong with them? And what was the problem? When this year's prep, it was fine because they knew what to expect. But it's that fear of the unknown that, you know, let's say, for example, Hannah, you didn't compete and Kenny went from this really loving, really affectionate guy to like, do my fucking cardio, bro, number one. 4 in the morning, and didn't do the little things. And I got I'm going to say called out last year. Me and my fiance were walking upstairs to our old flat, and she went, "Yeah, we've not kissed me in about 4 weeks." And I went, it just is like a dagger. It's, you guys are so right to make the other person aware. And at the time, I guess I didn't. And it was only then I was like, right, sit down. This is why I've got no sex drive. This is why I'm up at this time, blah, blah, blah. It's all right, because I guess, and again, that probably leads us into the next point, was that prep itself, what you just described, Hannah, and Kenny added to it, is that it can cause quite a strain on a relationship. And maybe one person's more affectionate, it might sort of cause more arguments. And I think that we can use Kenny's hanger as an example. Does that ever cause any disagreements, any arguments or whatnot?
Yes, but to be honest, it's actually not just a prep thing. This is like an all year round hanger with him. So like even in off season, if he's maybe 10 minutes late for a meal, he'll be like pushing me out the way in the kitchen. Move. I need to get my meal. Like he's very like, but I think because I know him now, like I can laugh it off now and I'm not that sensitive with it. But maybe at the beginning, like I remember when we first met, like he was on prep and I wasn't. I was in off season because we had different timings and stuff. And it was honestly a proper nightmare. Like I would say we argued almost daily, big fights, like almost relationship ending fights every day.
I think it was so bad though because I was trying to prep myself. So I was doing the usual mistake that you do when you prep yourself for the first time, overdoing everything, under eating, and then having that zero accountability. so my accountability was lying with myself, and it's just a recipe for disaster
I think as well, because we had just met, and obviously when you meet somebody, like go on dates and stuff, like we couldn't do that. So if you combine that with like him being grumpy with hunger, it was tough, like when we first started going out. But then I kind of said, like, I'm not putting up with this, because you've still got 8 weeks to go to your show. I won't cope with this for 8 weeks, kind of thing. And I think just putting my foot down sorted it, because he turned into nice again.
And that's why I'd made the point of, it's all very well me wanting to get on stage, but you just have to take that step back and think about the impact that it's going to have on other people. Remove the selfish aspect, because as we know, bodybuilding can be so selfish, but you don't have to be a selfish person. You can take that away by thinking about others.
I tell you what would be good. Someone will be listening thinking, what impact on other people? So, I know that you and me guys know, but some listeners that say it's the first time listening, they'll go, what does that even mean? So talk us through that, both from your own perspective.
So, even just from a non-relationship point of view, for a single person, you've got your friends and your family. So friends, they're not going to understand why you can't go out at the weekend and drink with them. They're not going to understand why you don't have the energy to go on like a lads' night or even just to the movies. Your family, they're probably the least understanding of all, because obviously, they've known you your whole life, and then you take on this new hobby and they think, why are you doing this to yourself? Why? You look good, why do you want to take it any further? You don't need to do that. It's unhealthy. It's this, it's that. So because you're passionate about what you're doing, obviously you're not really going to take these people's opinions into consideration. So for me, I've been guilty in the past and thinking, if you don't understand me, I'm not going to bother with you. And it can end relationships. It can damage relationships. So I think that would probably be my biggest explanation with that one.
I think for me, obviously when I worked in a non-fitness related job, I found it tough with everybody's negative opinions towards what I was doing. And this was only recently, under a year ago, but even sitting with the same meal for lunch, it would be every day get negative comments like, why are you eating that? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And I think you need to be quite prepared for that. And you need to try and build that mental strength to know your why and know that you're not doing it for anyone else's approval kind of thing, and they're not going to understand. So just focus on yourself. And obviously it's hard when you're trying to keep a positive mindset. You need to try and keep a positive circle, but you don't control your circle in work, for example. So colleagues, friends, you can obviously control, but colleagues you can't. So I think that can be tough as well.
And like Hannah said there, they won't understand why you're doing something. They'll constantly slate away to it. So having that, I remember Hannah came home one day and she'd been, she'd worked in a bank, and they were having this sort of buffet thing with a lunch. And she says that she was too embarrassed to take her Tupperware out and start eating her meal. So she was actually behind with her meals for the whole day. And I didn't understand it. I said, why would you do that? It's your thing. Just get them told, just don't care what people think. But then when I took a step back and I looked at it, she was in a massive meeting environment where she was the odd one out. So, feeling alienated for other people, you then sort of think, I'm just going to try and blend in here. I'm just going to try and act like a normal person and then do my bodybuilding in my own time.
But when I think back to times like that, I shake myself, because I should be proud of what I'm doing, and I should be embrace being different. And I like that now, but when you're not as mentally strong as that, it can be tough to sort of be well, yeah, I'm different, what of it? And that's something I've always struggled with throughout competing until the last year or so. So I think as well, just being able to concentrate on your work, if you do, concentration around people as well, Kenny was saying about my awareness, it's just concentration kind of goes out the window, especially towards the end of your prep. So that can be tough as well, and that can impact others.
Yeah, 100%. I think I just wanted you guys to share some of, whether it be your personal experiences or just what you could perhaps think would be a negative impact, because although we'll talk about, do these podcasts weekly, and there'll be episodes that people will forget about. that we've maybe spoken about the same thing. So that constant reminder of, you know what, this is perhaps what could happen, but this is what's certainly not to do. And, you know, I think, Kenny, you made a great point about your first initial reaction was, wait, why would you do that? I think it's definitely a guy thing to be like, we're the strong alpha. Why, we're going to do this. And what you mentioned about not pushing other people away, again, that's something I've been guilty of before. 2017, the first time I prepped, if you weren't interested in my prep, I wasn't interested in you.
Yes.
Right? And it ended or had an impact on quite a lot of friendships, relationship, sort of self-isolated myself from a lot of other people. But I think the impression I get from you guys is that you support each other so much, and perhaps you've learnt from the past that you guys don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me, what it was is one day I had a conversation with Rob, my former coach, and I was actually saying to him, it's annoying me how much that people don't understand. And he says to me, you shouldn't be getting annoyed. He says, the key is in what you just said there. People don't understand. He says, so instead of getting frustrated with them, why don't you just educate them on why you're doing it and, what it's going to do for you as a person? He says, then, if they're not understanding, he says, I'd maybe look at, removing yourself from that situation or just distancing yourself from that person.
Yeah.
I think quite naturally, especially when you get towards the end of prep, you do distance yourself from almost everything. Like when you're 2-3 weeks out, you're not going to lad
just kind of floating.
Exactly. Yeah. Just exist.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? So I just thought it was a good sort of thing to add. Now, before I move on, one thing I should ask you and said at the very start of the episode, but I've only remembered now, is that you guys have opening a gym.
Yeah. Definitely.
Doing this during lockdown whilst running the business, like working on your own physique. So I just wanted you to kind of give a little, I know you guys are doing updates on your Instagram, but for the ones that perhaps aren't following you, or maybe they are after this episode, talk us through how that came about and how you guys are managing that.
So obviously a couple of days before the gym's announced being closed, me and Kenny kind of panic bought a few things, like a couple of squat racks and stuff, just out of pure panic because we thought, how are we going to train? So just all of our savings went out the window, bought loads of kit, and we didn't even have a place to put it. So we just put it down at the bottom of the garden, tried to build like a couple of gazebos that have fallen apart over time.
Like Ali will know.
Yeah. But we just panicked so much at the time. So over time, we sort of, after discussing with our clients, it was our clients actually suggested it, and we were like, oh no, hardly. And then we were like, actually, because obviously a lot of our clients suffer with like gym anxiety, like are a bit nervous, like during PT sessions, they're just constantly on edge and stuff because, like I mentioned, there is only a couple of gyms in Inverness, so they do have like a busy, sort of quite intimidating environment for a beginner. So over time, we built our clients' confidence, but then lockdown came, and I think it'll be like right at this back at square one now. So we just kind of sat and chatted, and obviously Rob's still our business mentor, so we sat and discussed it with him, and we just kind of...
It sort of snowballed. We kind of thought we'll start with a PT studio, just somewhere for us to train in private, and then, as you know, one idea leads to the other. Then you start viewing units, and these little units that we're reviewing, we were just thinking, nah, screw that. You're going to be tied to this for X amount of years, so you need to enjoy it. And
we're always like dreaming big, like with everything we think of, it's like ridiculous ideas, but then they actually do just become things. So
and we're really limited with equipment in Inverness, so we thought, right, instead of driving to Glasgow every Sunday to use the hack squat, what we'll do is we will try and bring the equipment here that is going to benefit our progress. And if it's going to benefit our progress, then it's going to benefit the clients as well.
Yeah.
So with KHRU, we've kind of started like this little community feel to it. So we've got, the groups on the go, female group chats, male group chats. And it's started to build up and become bigger and bigger and bigger. Much like yourself, you go into Inverness Town Centre and you see people wearing KHRU hoodies So it's starting to expand out the way now. And I think just with having the gym, it's going to be, you know, a central point for crew and like a base for that community.
And also from like the point of our own training, like I obviously got kicked out of the Ballantines in Inverness, which is...
For those that don't know that, please tell us that story.
Okay, so we've obviously only got the 2 gyms basically, and I've been training Ballantines since I was 15, and it was like, knew all the staff, like loved it there. And then one day one of the members of staff just came over and said, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave if you don't be quiet, because I was training legs. So I just thought, fuck you, I'm just gonna leave. So I just it was actually really hard, because that was my comfort zone, but looking back, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because if you just stay comfy, you don't really grow anywhere. So I started, because I like the idea of like going somewhere else to train away from my work, like where I PT'd clients, because I found it difficult to transition between like PT mode and then my own training mode.
Just shifting your mindset from work mode into training mode when you're in the same environment was quite hard.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, when people wouldn't know you were training and it'd be coming up to you and stuff. So we did find that quite hard in the beginning.
Yeah. But then looking back, like even training in the garden, like there's always another level. And when you are like maybe subconsciously worried about like making too much noise or worried about people's opinions, you don't perform as well, even if you think you're doing your best. There's always another level. So the garden kind of showed me that. And then now we've got the gym, and it's like perfect, because I don't have to worry about spiders, I don't have to worry about bees, and there's no one else watching me judging my noises, so it's great.
The one noise I can make out from Kenny's stories is that, come on!
The trademark, come on!
Yes! I'm like, I just wish it makes me want to go train. It's absolutely, it's absolutely brilliant. But I think you're right. There's too much of a stigma in commercial gyms, and believe me, I dealt with that for over 3-4 years when I lifted a certain gym, from different managers saying, you can't do that, we're not a bodybuilder's gym, blah blah. And I was like, I can't help it.
I know.
It comes out.
Exactly.
The whole like maybe, you know, shaking the hack squat, shaking the bar. I get that, but you guys are right. If you work in that environment and you're trying to like get yourself up for like a top set, there's no way that you can do that with just being like, dad.
I know.
No. Head on the wall or something like that.
That's it.
What I wanted to do, and I think this would be a kind of good point for the listeners as well, is you mentioned earlier in the episode, and I wanted to interject there, but you were on a good point. You mentioned your first prep that you, or from before, you said failure set you up for success. Now, failure isn't something I would class as perhaps not placing or whatever, but without, if it was to do with competing, let's go into details about it. If it wasn't, we'll forget about it, we'll move on. But could you talk us through how that, what you said, failure has set you up mindset-wise to be so fucking regimented for success in the future? And it shows in the fact that you guys' results last year, but also like what you've done with your business in like what, 7 months less than that is phenomenal. So talk us through that.
For me, you know, if it's failure, it would never be on a placing, you know, because we can't control who's going to show up. It really isn't about the placing. But for me, it's about how I feel. And I went through 16 weeks of prep and was very unhappy with the way that I looked at the end of it. And I thought, for me, that's failure, because I should have done something about it at some point. I should have said to my coach, what's happening here? Not happy. It's not working. And that's what I classed as failure. And that was at the PCA Body Power Show. And I'll never forget that feeling of looking around backstage and thinking, I shouldn't be here. I'm out of my depth, you know. And yeah, you know, that could have come down to a bit of self-confidence. But, you know, when I removed that from the situation and I looked at myself, I just wasn't happy with it at all. So that's what I classed as failure, was that feeling of being dissatisfied with what I'd done.
If anything, it seems like it's given you a lot of hunger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to come back and prove something to yourself.
That's it. It's always to yourself.
What you want to achieve. But I just wanted to delve down the whole, you guys are into mindset. Mm-hmm. So if we were to discuss, we have a little bit of time. We've got plenty of time left. If we were to discuss you guys the importance of mindset within the competing realms, talk us through the advice, perhaps, again, we'll get it from a female perspective, a male perspective, advice you would give to a first-time competitor, mindset-wise, going into a prep and a show. What would that be? We'll start with ladies first. Hannah.
I think mindset is like the most important thing in anything, any aspect of life. But obviously, if you sort of lack a lot of self-doubt, you're not going to enjoy the process as much. If you're constantly worried, like I remember my first show, I would like every night dream about being on stage and people like laughing, and I would dream about like my bikini falling off and all these stupid things because I was so nervous. But that's when I look back to my first prep, I just remember like negative thoughts and fear, and I didn't enjoy the process because I was just so anxious about it, nervous, like, and it was just a horrible kind of situation. And I think you've got to work a lot on your mindset because competing, obviously you are a bit different, like what Kenny was saying, you're a bit alien to sort of the normal person. So you need to be confident in your ability, and you need to be confident in yourself and strong-minded enough to not let sort of normality, like normal people's opinions, get you down, because you will get a lot of negative opinions on what you're doing, for like the health side of it, for the way that you look. Like people are always going to talk, and if you do something different, you're going to get a lot of shit for it. Like especially if you're in a smaller town like us, and even like yourself, like because there's not a lot of people that do what you do, you're going to get a lot of hate and negative opinions. Like in my experience, I've had much more negativity than positive thoughts at me. So you need to be prepared for that. And I think if you don't have a strong mindset and work at your mindset, it's not something that you can just switch on and have a good mindset tomorrow. You've got to work at every day, like your physique. Like you have to keep on top of it, because if not, it'll just swallow you up and you'll just end up feeling so shit. And it can spiral into a lot of things, like if you don't work at your mindset. And this is only something that I sort of realised 8 weeks out from Two Bros, because I ended up signed off work in the bank with like stress and anxiety, and I didn't know I had anything like that. Like I thought I was totally good mindset wise. Like I'd never even listened to a podcast before. Like I was just in my own little world, and I didn't even know what mindset meant, to be honest. So this is a very recent thing. That's why I feel so strong about it. But I just felt like so horrible in myself. And obviously if you're 8 weeks out from a show, you can't really be stressed. Like it doesn't really go well with the prep. So it was so tough, but I'm so glad it happened looking back, because it kicked me up the arse to actually do something about my mindset. And now obviously we've got KHRU and we help people daily with their mindset. So yeah, super important to me, for sure.
If you could go back to that first prep and give a few words of advice to that Hannah from yourself today, what would they be?
Well, first of all, have an off season, because I didn't have an off season. I just went straight into dieting. Learn the process, like actually educate yourself on what you're doing, because I just wanted to sort of challenge myself and I didn't know what I was actually getting into. Also educate yourself on the right coach, because the coach I had wasn't specific for competing. She was like more like a lifestyle coach, so it didn't work well with the show. And just be more confident in what you're doing and believe in yourself and just get a grip. Because again, I felt sorry for myself. Like even though it was my choice, I felt like, oh my God, I've got to do this and all I want to do is eat, and I just want to eat donuts, but I've got to do cardio and stuff. And it was just, mindset was so wrong behind it.
Yeah. Now, same question to you, Ken. The mindset you give a first-time male competitor.
For me, it would be, again, like Hannah says, find your why to why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. Don't do it for anybody else but yourself. It's not going to get you girls. It's not going to get you street cred. It just doesn't do any of those sort of things. So you have to be doing it for the right reasons. And for me, a lot like yourself, I'm just so obsessed with progress, no matter what it is, whether it's my physique, business, life. I just like to see progress the whole time. So if I could go back to the start and give myself any advice, it would be just to remain patient, because a lot of people, they sort of try and run before they can walk, you know, in every aspect, you know, when it comes to what show they choose, what drugs they use, you know, everything. And for me, one thing I am happy about, I feel that I made the right decision with the federation that I chose. I started out with the UKUP. They were a really good federation for beginners. It gets you a general idea of what the process is going to be like for show day. It's nice because they give you time. It's a learning process. And I do believe in the levels. You know, we've both been there. We've done the levels where you start with UKUP, you start building it up. And I know for you, you probably never ever started out wanting to wear board shorts your whole career, you know, and
I didn't know.
I was the same. So we both knew we can't jump in wearing bodybuilding trunks with no legs. So it just takes time to build it up. And I think having that clear plan in your head of where you want to go is a mindset on its own. It is sort of planning your destination and ticking the boxes, what you have to do until you get there. And like you say, keeping that patience, because that's been my problem a lot of the time. I get very impatient, and it's almost like I have to wind myself back in and reset my mind and realise where I'm at. And if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to get to where I want to be.
Or I have to wind you back in.
Well, Hannah winds me.
There's a way to say, what is it that you wind them back in?
Yeah.
What happens though is Hannah tries to wind me in, but I don't come back in. And then maybe a couple hours later, I'll feel like it was my idea to wind it back.
Yeah.
I think we just described as that's just guys. That's exactly what we do. We must not be our idea. You know?
Yeah. I'm not doing it because she's told me. I'm doing it because I've decided.
Exactly. But mate, I think what you said is so true. I love UKUP as a fed for the athletes that we work with, which is a lot of first-time bikini girls. And that's where we'll start. You know,
Totally.
to get a little bit. I started my men's physique journey, which was one and done, with UKBFF back in 2017. You know, as a fed, it's maybe on the decline. I never really know why. I guess I'm not from an era where it was big. People talk about it used to be a huge, but I came into the scene as it was sort of tailing off. But now the main one, and we'll say this is one of the main reasons why we've got Kenny on, because he's also Two Bros classic physique converter, and you are Two Bros bikini as well. It's just, as you guys know, the fed to do, right? And yes, I'll say to everyone that if it's your first time, it doesn't matter the federation. Just do it, Josh. And on the flip side of that, I spoke to Josh Malley, who's Mr. NABA Pro Universe, and I asked him, Josh, I went, can I just ask why you've never done Two Bros? And he went, I like NABA. And his advice to competitors was, if you like a federation, stick with it. You guys have found Two Bros, you like it, you stuck with it. And I think you guys will probably agree they're probably the only federation that's trying to actually give back to the athletes with this whole thing.
Yes, for sure. 100%. And I love how fair the Two Bros is. You know, it's knowing that you can walk on stage up against guys your own height in a similar weight class. There's so much to be said for that. You know,
I think for like PCA, it's kind of who shows up on the day. So like they have a criteria, but say for bikini girls, like if the whole lineup is maybe like a softer look, then but you show up looking like lean and hard, then you're probably not going to place. Whereas if the whole lineup was lean, does that make sense? Like I think they don't really know sometimes.
A lot of it's kind of how they feel on the day. Whereas with Two Bros, you have to fit that category. There's no bones about it. You know, you have to be classic physique or you have to be men's physique. It's really, really clear.
It's just very consistent when you look across the board of the winners, whereas PCA, it's like each week it seems to change the look that they want, in my opinion.
Preaching to the choir. One, you know, what they look for in a Scottish federation versus what they look for versus an English show.
Mad.
You're like,
it's mental.
So as a coach, sometimes you're like, right, cool, we're going to make you a little bit softer because that's what PC are looking for. And then you go in and no place and you go, well, that was my fault because I made you softer and to give it to a girl that looks a bit harder. So completely agree. But anyway, going back to the couple bodybuilding side of things. Now, there might be some listeners out there that we've said it's their first time, and we've spoken about the sort of advice that you guys would give each other. But I've never heard of a couple that have came together when someone is 8 weeks out.
Yeah.
I find that, and the fact that you guys are still here, people must be like that. Please give them counselling or therapy. But was it that you guys never really could be a quote unquote couple until your prep was over, Kenny? And if so, how long really was that? And Hannah, why did you put up with it?
Good question. Nah, I'm joking. So I think for me, because at the time I think we were the only two people in Inverness that had competed or wanted to compete. It's very rare up here even now, but this was how 3 years ago. So so I was just excited to be there and support Kenny, and I found it so Kenny was a big inspiration of mine before we started going out.
Got red here.
I know. I thought he was like a celebrity when I seen him in the gym. I was like, holy shit, that guy's been on stage, holy shit. And then he tried to speak to me one day, and I literally turned the colour of a tomato, and I was like, oh my god, he's speaking to me. It was so scary for me. But then obviously we started dating, and it was a bit different because obviously the food situation, you couldn't go out for food and stuff, but he wasn't in the trenches where he had no energy. He was still good fun and stuff, so it wasn't, and food wasn't that important to me. I know some people are it has to be a dinner date, have to go out for dinner and stuff, but it wasn't that important to me.
I think what it was is it made it so much easier because obviously Hannah had competed at this point, and she understood what I had to do. And if anything, it was because I never had a coach, because I was self-prepping, she was another set of eyes for me as well. So I kind of relied a lot on what she was telling me. From a feedback point of view, I relied on her to kind of keep me accountable as well. So, that sort of relationship there with our boyfriend-girlfriend relationship really helped because I was relying on her a hell of a lot. So it made me really thankful for the process as well.
And then I think when he did do his competition, then we got a lot closer after, and we were more sort of a normal couple. And then from then on, we did all the same shows.
And we did, though. We sat down and spoke about it and thought, right, I think going forward, for our relationship, it's always going to be better if we time our competitions in to be in line with each other.
Yeah, because even when, because obviously when we did our shows together, I had to start prep sooner because I was chubbier than Kenny. I had more fat to lose and stuff. So I was on prep for 3 months before Kenny at one point. And that was tough because I was in prep mode, getting up for cardio, going to the gym, doing my steps, and he was on off season mode where he wasn't allowed to do any steps. And that was hard as well because
there was that time apart, but it was kind of making me excited for my prep to start. And I was thinking, right, she's kind of up against it here, so I'll help her. I'll prep her meals. I'll do the kind of running about so that she can just concentrate on her prep. So instead of me just being a lazy bastard and lying in my bed and enjoying all my sleep and all my food, I thought I would try and help out a wee bit, because it made me feel better. I then didn't feel like she was suffering alone.
And I guess hopefully what that does is I hope that it takes any worry away from any perhaps couples or half of a couple that's listening on, okay, can we actually do this? Can we prep together? But if there was a guy or a girl or both a couple out there that had a little bit of worry about, okay, this might end our relationship or whatnot, talk us through what you would say to them. They came on call and said, Kenny, Hannah, we're really unsure about this. We're worried that it's going to end us. What would you guys' advice be to them?
It's like everything. You've got to communicate. Communication is key. If obviously there's telltale signs, I'll be able to tell if Hannah's unhappy about something with the way that she behaves. But if she doesn't tell me what it is, there's nothing I can do about it, and vice versa. So
I think if you've already got a strong relationship, prep's not going to make it any less strong. And if you're doing it together, it makes it more enjoyable because you can like meal prep together and you can time like your workouts together, and as long as you're sort of organized. And
we were still having like, you know, date nights just for prep food, but the difference is you would sit down at the table and eat it off a plate rather than Tupperware.
Yeah.
And you know, I know that sounds stupid, but just doing wee things like that to kind of make you feel more normal was a massive help.
And I think it makes you appreciate the other person so much more when all like the superficial things are taken away, like date nights and stuff, and you've just literally got each other, and that's it. It definitely made us like stronger as a couple.
And we would sort of spend a lot of time planning things that we were going to do after prep, like holidays,
food,
you know, trips. So it does make you appreciate little things that you take for granted even in off season, let alone life. So, you know, having somebody there, again, that communication, I firmly believe that we could do it if, you know, we're prepping at different times, because again, it just comes down to that wee bit of teamwork. You know, I would then be in the position to help Hannah out, or she'd be able to help me out. It's definitely not impossible.
Yeah. Love that. What would you guys say is the best thing about being a couple that are both into bodybuilding?
Definitely like the support, like the 24. It's like having your coach there 24/7, I suppose, as well, because like you've got support, and having somebody that understands there all the time as well, and the honesty, like
and I think
it's exciting too.
Unless you have ever stood on a stage before, you will never know what kind of feeling it gives you and how proud you are, even no matter what placing you get.
Yeah.
So stepping off stage and having somebody there that knows exactly how you feel, you know, it just nothing compares to that. So it's something that, you know, very few people can share together. So I would say that's probably one of the best things, is being able to share the struggle, but then being able to share the reward as well.
And I think as well, like Kenny motivates me a lot, like on prep. Like if I see him, I'm like, holy shit, he's looking so good. Or if he's like still training really hard, I'm like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And like if I see him going faster than me on the bike, I'm like, right, okay. I suppose I'm a wee bit competitive, but I'm like, right, if he can do that, and he's like, you know, being on prep at the same time as me, or he's on a wee bit lower food today, like he's pushing through, so I can push through.
Just spur each other on, basically. So it's that constant support, and knowing that there's very few people that's gone through this process, but you're in it together. It's really quite special.
Yeah, you guys have your own personal cheerleader with you at all times.
Exactly.
Which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because too much in the industry, a lot of people will be going through it alone, and they value, you know, likes or thumbs up.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
But I guess if I was in you guys' shoes, I don't know, I'll ask you, do you kind of go away from that and you go within your own little sort of Hannah Kenny bubble, and you know,
100%.
So like we don't really like, I don't like sharing a lot of things like to do with our relationship and even like personal life. Like obviously for business you do have to share a lot on social media, but I like to keep our like relationship stuff just private, because
I'll sort of share things relating to training and that, so that it helps our own clients out. But the last thing I would do is document like a whole night if we had it to ourselves, because that's our time.
Yeah.
You know, try and, you know, keep our thing as private as we can, but still show, you know, that we love each other.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Plus I like having like Instagram to like look back on things. Like I'll like when memories pop up, I'm like, oh look, that was us like in Ibiza, and it's nice to look back on memories. But definitely like you will kind of a lot of people rely on like likes or comments from other people to make them feel good, which I don't do, because obviously I've got Kenny, and I don't know, I just don't do that, because like sometimes it's not real anyway, is it? Like social media is not real. No. So, and
for me, my social media, you know, I've got a certain few people I speak to, you know, yourself being one of them. I'll always value, you know, opinions and comments for guys like that, rather than just random people. You know, it's more about the quality of interaction that I get through my social media rather than the quantity.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I like to ask a lot of guests that come on, I guess I could ask you this both separately. It doesn't need to be to do with bodybuilding, but something that you could tell the listeners just what your sort of biggest lesson in life that you've learned to date. And from that lesson, is there anything, advice you would give from that?
Yeah, definitely. Never to limit yourself, no matter what it is. If the minute you place a limit on a thought that you've got, then you've restricted yourself. So I think we're living proof that the minute you uncap, those limitations, then, you can literally achieve whatever you want.
Love it.
Yeah, that would be mine similar. And also, like, it's okay to say no to things. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a big lesson that I've learned and still kind of learning. Like,
I think a lot of people, they want to do things, but they just generally don't believe they can do it. So, just putting it out there and not being afraid to fail is a major thing.
And also just not being afraid to, like, you're not put in this world to please other people. Mm-hmm. You're just here for yourself and your own pleasing.
I love it. I always like asking that because I always get something a little bit different from every guest. So it's amazing. And for anyone listening that is thinking, right, I want to follow these guys. I mean, they're from the Middle Earth, but I want to follow them. Could you let us know, how they can get in touch with you, whether it be on Instagram, website, or whatnot?
Yep. So our website's www.KHRU.com, and our Instagram is crew_coaching, and my Instagram is Hannah McClellan _.
And I am Kenny Gibb Physique on Instagram.
Yes.
Fantastic. Now, if anyone is listening, from myself and the team, please do follow these guys. They're a huge inspiration. They are up and coming within the Scottish bodybuilding, UK bodybuilding scene, and KHRU Coaching. Remember the name, because if you don't remember it, you will certainly hear about it within a few years. So, listen, guys, I just want to say thank you for myself for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you both on. And if you are listening, from Hannah, from Kenny, and from myself, give it the beans.